West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Senator Lindsey Graham grabbing headlines this week for calling a measure in the COVID bill that forgives the loans of black farmers reparations. He's gotten a lot of attention in recent years for becoming a version of himself that no one can seem to recognize. Let's roll the tape from the beginning, when 2015 Lindsey Graham was not a Trump fan, to put it mildly, and they were both running for president.
You know how you make America great again? Tell Donald Trump to go to hell. He's a jackass, and he shouldn't be commander-in-chief.
Once Trump entered the White House, the metamorphosis of Lindsey Graham began.
I am all in. Keep it up, Donald. I'm sure you're watching.
I couldn't be more proud of the fact that he talks to me and he asks my opinion. And we've got a lot in common now. I like him and he likes him.
President Trump, if he can lead us to ending the Korean War after 70 years and getting North Korea to give up their nuclear program in a verifiable way, deserves the Nobel Peace Prize and then some.
Senator Lindsey Graham became a surefire echo of Trump.
I'm a single white male from South Carolina, and I'm told I should shut up, but I will not shut up.
The president continues to call this the Chinese virus.
It came from China.
I mean, you think it's okay for him to say that?
Yeah, I do.
The idea is that viruses do not have a nationality.
Well, the Spanish flu had a name.
Graham's allegiance to the controversial president landed him a Democratic challenger who threatened Graham's political survival. Graham was worried, and he traveled to the mothership for help.
I'm getting outraised 3-1, outspent 4-1. If you want to help me fight back, go to lindseygraham.com. $5 or $10 from half your audience would fill in the gap that I'm facing.
I'm being killed financially. This money is because they hate my guts. Get on our website, lindseygraham.com. $5 or $10 goes a long way.
I'm getting overwhelmed. LindseyGraham.com, help me. I'm being outraised 2-1. If you want to help me, LindseyGraham.com, $5 or $10 goes a long way. LindseyGraham.com, they're loading me up because I'm chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Go to LindseyGraham.com to help me.
LindseyGraham.com, if you want to help me by going to my website.
So help me at LindseyGraham.com. They're trying to silence us all by swamping us with money. LindseyGraham.com, help me. Let me just say this. The internet is on fire tonight, Phil. They are raising money like crazy to take back the Senate and beat President Trump. Help me, help everybody I just named, LindseyGraham.com.
In 2020, Trump lost, but Graham won re-election handily, and he then shamelessly helped Trump grow the big lie.
President Trump should not concede. There's a civil war brewing. I don't really accept the outcome of the Georgia election.
Now, it was more than just rhetoric, because Graham actually picked up the phone and allegedly tried to get legal votes thrown out in Georgia.
Well, he asked if the ballots could be matched back to the voters, and then I got the sense it implied that then you could throw those out. And he really would look at the counties with the highest frequent error of signatures. So it's just an implication that look hard and see how many ballots you could throw out.
Graham denies that he said this on the call and argued that he was simply interested in the signature verification process. His spokesman told CNN that Graham never asked for any ballots to be disqualified. Then Graham appeared to have a moment of self-reflection after a crowd of extremists inspired and incited by Trump and Republicans like Graham stormed the Capitol.
Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it to end this way. Oh my God, I hate it. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough. I, above all others in this body, need to say this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are lawfully elected.
But Graham's moment of self-reflection was short-lived. His upset over the insurrection waned.
The not guilty vote is growing after today. I think most Republicans found the presentation by the House managers offensive and absurd. Why don't we impeach George Washington? He owned slaves.
I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to end the impeachment trial because I think it's blatantly unconstitutional.
So Graham voted to acquit the president in the Senate impeachment trial for inciting the mob, and he apparently thinks that Trump is the last best hope for the party, saying this over the weekend.
There's something about Trump. There's a dark side and there's some magic there. What I'm trying to do is just harness the magic. To me, Donald Trump is sort of a cross between Jesse Helms, Ronald Reagan, and P.T. Barnum. I mean, it's just this bigger than life deal. He could make the Republican Party something that nobody else I know could make it. It could make it bigger. He could make it stronger. He could make it more diverse. And he also could destroy it.
There's some magic there, Lindsey Graham says. The only magic there is watching the Lindsey Graham we once knew disappear. Trump isn't a magician. He's a carnival barker, whipping up an audience for a one-man circus, because it's clear there's no room in his tent for anyone else. Donald Trump has only ever acted in the interest of one thing, himself. No matter how much Lindsey Graham or any other person has fancied him or herself able to channel Trump's conspiracy theory and fear-fueled energy for the good of the party, the RNC is learning that the hard way now. And yet Graham praises a man who helped incite an insurrection against the seat of democracy, against Graham's workplace, while he and his colleagues were inside. He puts all hope in the guy who helped Republicans lose the White House, lose the Senate, fail to retake the House, who was impeached twice by the House, though he was acquitted by the Senate. And Graham is proof that once a politician warps themselves to go all in on Trump, it's a chemical change. It reveals their new substance, like this.
Let me give you an example of something that really bothers me. In this bill, if you're a farmer, your loan will be forgiven up to 120% of your loan, not 100%, but 120% of your loan if you're socially disadvantaged, if you're African American, some other minority. But if you're white person, if you're a white woman, no forgiveness as reparations.
He ought to be ashamed of himself. He knows the history in this country, and he knows what has happened to black farmers. The lawsuit that we've never been able to rectify. We've had so much recalcitrance. I think he ought to go back and maybe go to church, get in touch with his Christianity.
Senator Lindsey Graham used to be John McCain's sidekick, his beloved friend, his partner in crime. He stood by as Trump insulted McCain's legacy and honor. Graham championed traditional Republican values of fiscal conservatism and hawkish views on national security once. But Lindsey Graham, as we once knew him, began to transform. John McCain would pass away after battling brain cancer. And Graham would go off into the desert searching for relevance, something he found in Donald Trump, someone so different from John McCain. Lindsey Graham is but a moon reflecting the light of whichever sun shines on him.
It is Thursday, the 11th of March of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya a little bit of spice in your life. Well, we have a COVID relief bill, the American Rescue Plan. Yes, and I just got to tell people out there who are misunderstanding what this is about, okay? $1.9 trillion in tax cuts to 684 billionaires is handing out free money. This stimulus package that, well, will benefit millions, hundreds of millions of people is not handing out free money. Where do you come up with this stuff? Yeah, I made mention that, 13,000 jobs were saved at American Airlines because of the American Rescue Plan. And the argument was that American Airlines should have just went out of business. What? Do you know how many Boeing planes the American Airlines has? And I know that the people who were complaining to me about this have Boeing stock. Conveniently forgot about that little measure, eh? Just because the liberal president put everything into place. So, we have an intractable political ideology, or is it ideology, that really pretty much refuses to live in reality. We have to kowtow to them. Oh, can't call them Nazis, but they'll call you commie. And then totally deny that they've ever used that as a derogatory term. Oh, really? You mean how liberal was never a pejorative for the last 50 years? So much so that liberals had to call themselves progressives. People forget about that. The reason that we have even the term progressive right now is because everybody was afraid to use the term liberal to identify themselves because the right wing made liberal a bad word. So, please, this isn't our first rodeo. No, it's not. So, we will, I guess, keep chugging along. You know, when you have money to spend, you spend the money. That's not a bad thing. That's how the engines of our whole economy work. People get money, people spend money. I don't know why that's so hard to understand. But, given $1.9 trillion to 684 billionaires, that's no problem. But apparently, all this money, the payroll relief plan, I don't understand why any of this would be considered a bad thing by anybody. So my only conclusion is that they really don't know what the hell is going on. And if you try to explain, then of course the know-nothings say that the know-it-alls always know it all, and they just lord over us. I hate the idea that because one takes it seriously that they should inform themselves in a reasonable, responsible, and rational way, that's a bad thing. Used to be that if one went through that effort, they garnered a little bit of respect. But now the know-nothings know everything. And those who actually have the shall we say the titles that shows their learned approach throughout life, that's all for naught. Because somebody who read something for 20 minutes on the internet now knows more than you do. Okay. Well, I guess we'll just have to keep chugging along. I really don't think that kind of thinking is going to last for very long. Because there's no uptick for it. There isn't. All right. Well, we could go on and on and on about that. It's just, I only mention it because it's so disconcerting. It's a complete denial of the facts. Or shall we say, it's a complete denial of wanting to know the facts. I guess because it creates too much dissonance in a world they've already created for themselves. Oh, no, you mean I have to deal with reality? No way. It's much easier to find identifiable groups and rail against them. Much easier. But we're not going to go the easy route now, are we? No, we're not. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we start off on this fine Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays? Well, there are those who think that Lindsey Graham has turned into a version of himself no one recognizes. And there's others that say, it looks about the same to us. Yeah, he just bends in the wind. He's the reflective moon of whatever sun happens to be around. On the rest of the menu, a Virginia Republican running for governor is set to speak at a KKK-friendly church because that's how they get advanced now. The Biden EPA will reconsider a Trump rule on lead in drinking water. They're going to reconsider probably lowering the amount of lead that's allowed. I think they should take it all out. And while Ken Paxton is suing mayors and businesses for requiring masks, the FBI has opened another investigation into the Texas AG for handing out jobs to big donors. And this is the last time he got indicted for this. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where one person was killed as police fired on students protesting fee increases at South Africa's Wits University. And the U.S. returned 280 pre-Hispanic archaeological pieces back to Mexico. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, right there by the social media scroll. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of that chat room link, across the page that's near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you help us fulfill our civic duty. And what is our civic duty? Well, ostensibly and on the surface, it's being the resistance to the prevailing Nazism that seems to be pervading our society. But more importantly, what really helps us is that we are able to pay our bills. Though the bulk of how we do this comes out of our own pockets, our own wallets, we would still be unable to do this without you and your generosity. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we then pool those funds with our own, and others too, by the way, and pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resisting this Nazi takeover, how dare they, and ultimately fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, oh, so many years ago. And yes, how many years have we been here? 10. Today is our 10th anniversary. Woohoo! Happy birthday to us. Yeah, we have some perseverance here because we do take this seriously. And it's been sad. We've seen a lot of podcasts come and go over the years. Content that we had on Netroots Radio, they were able to go for a while, but, it's hard. It's hard to keep it up. But we take it very seriously, what we do, and we will continue. So thank you for your generosity in allowing us to do so. Happy birthday to us. Woohoo! If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Ooh, a little catch in my throat there. Ooh. If you would like to follow me, and I suggest you do, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes and then put that up on Twitter at Justice Putnam. So check out the show notes and links diary. Those are the links to the actual source material. Very important. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. All right. Let's tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is out of the American Independent by the fabulous Oliver Willis. Former Virginia House Speaker Kirk Cox, who's currently a Republican candidate for governor of the state, is scheduled to speak at Christ First Church, whose school, Mighty Oak Christian Academy, uses curriculum associated with praising the KKK, minimizing slavery, and attack LGBTQ equality. Cox describes himself as a consistent conservative. Well, is that a nice way of saying you're a racist and a bigot? The video launching his campaign urged voters to fight back against cancel culture, echoing the rallying cry of Republicans who are fixated on potato head toys and Dr. Seuss books. Cox has opposed marriage equality and expanding access to voting and supports a ban on insurance plans that cover abortion. Cox recently announced he was thrilled to have the support of Representative Morgan Griffith, who voted to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. And yeah, he's a rep, the U.S. representative from Virginia. Christ First Church in Suffolk is hosting Cox as part of a Super Sunday series of speakers on March 21st. In a tweet promoting his appearance, Cox wrote, "Looking forward to joining as a guest speaker." The church operates Mighty Oak Christian Academy, which is listed on the church's website as Our School. The Mighty Oak website indicates that it is a ministry of Christ First Church. The 2019 Parent Handbook for Mighty Oak notes that it uses the ABECA curriculum, describing it as a Christian-based curriculum that will address all aspects of a child. The ABECA book, United States History, Heritage of Freedom, was cited in a Washington Post report for describing the Ku Klux Klan as a secret society that sought to improve the livelihoods of Southern whites during Reconstruction. Oh, so benign. The Klan, of course, is a violent terrorist organization that killed blacks for decades. The textbooks also blames inner-city poverty on a lack of homeowner pride, while omitting discussion on systemic racism and anti-black policies like redlining. One book in the curriculum, United States History for Christian Schools, claims while discussing the history of slavery in America that the majority of slaveholders treated their slaves very well. Yeah, they only beat them like 3 times a week instead of every day. An ABECA textbook used in Florida came under fire for alleging that the slave who knew Christ had more freedom than a free person who did not know the Savior. Wow, well. I guess they've never been a slave before in their lives, except to their own corrupt ideology. John Flesher of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration said yesterday, Wednesday, it was delaying the effective date of a policy intended to prevent lead pollution of drinking water, continuing a decades-old debate over how to remove a serious health hazard to children. The EPA said it was suspending a regulatory rewrite completed by the Trump administration in December, which is being challenged in court by numerous states and advocacy groups. The agency has not decided whether to seek changes, but wants to review the revised rule, take public input, and consult with affected parties. Critics contend the new measure is weak and gives public utilities too long to replace aging lead-tainted pipes, such as those that contaminated drinking water in Flint, Michigan. The overhaul has been scheduled to take effect on March 16th. Instead, the date was pushed to June 17th to allow comments on an additional proposed delay until December 16th. The regulatory update was completed 6 years after Flint became a national symbol of the long-standing threat from lead, which can disrupt children's brain development, causing learning and behavioral problems. Adults can also suffer nervous system and kidney damage. I should mention that a secret report that was, actually it became secret because it was suppressed by Big Oil. And then it came out. But the study had found that it looked like lead, when they took lead out of the gasoline, that crime rates started going down. Speculation was such that lead was causing brain damage, and I guess maybe the regulator that causes us to probably not break the law because those receptors were damaged by lead. And then in places where lead levels went back up, so did crime. Very interesting, eh? Now, residents of the majority black city and advocacy groups say systemic racism affected decisions that caused the contamination and the slow government response. The Trump administration's overhaul requires utilities to test waters at schools and daycare centers and to disclose the location of lead-containing service lines, which run from main water pipes to homes. It also toughens testing procedures. But environmental groups said it would give water systems up to 33 years to replace an estimated 6 million remaining lead service lines instead of 14 years under the previous rule. Andrew Wheeler, former EPA chief, said in December when the rule was announced that loopholes in the old rule were letting pipe replacements take too long. Jake Weinberg and Paul J. Weber of the AP bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro, Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is under FBI investigation over claims of using his office to help a political donor, gave a job in recent months to another supporter, a one-time neighbor whose family chipped in $50,000 to help the Republican fight a 2015 felony indictment. The hiring of Tom Gleason, a former ice cream company exec whose career had little in common with his new $95,000 a year state law enforcement role, adds to the mounting examples of Paxton using his office in ways that have benefited donors, friends, and political allies. The Associated Press confirmed Gleason went to work for Paxton in December through documents obtained under open records law. But the job did not last long. Gleason was fired after less than 2 months, but records offer no explanation as to why. Paxton declined to answer a question about Gleason during an online forum about technology yesterday, Wednesday. The Attorney General's office and Gleason have not responded to repeated requests for comment. In 2016, Paxton reported on financial disclosures that Gleason's dad gave him $50,000, one of the largest contributions to a legal defense fund that the Attorney General started after being indicted on felony securities fraud charges. More recent disclosures show Paxton also accepted lodging and airplane travel from Tom Gleason in 2019, but the documents did not say where or the value of the trip. Paxton has pleaded not guilty in the securities fraud case. He now faces separate legal troubles, sparked last fall when much of his senior staff reported him to the FBI for breaking the law to help an Austin businessman. Gleason's hiring as a connection between the two controversies. Accepting gifts in exchange for favors is prohibited under the Attorney General's internal guidelines, but the handbook makes no mention of hiring donors or supporters. Paxton's hiring of Gleason is the latest example of one of his allies benefiting from the Attorney General's office. Last April, Paxton intervened in a Colorado mountain community where a Texas donor and college classmate faced removal from his lakeside home under coronavirus orders. 5 months later, Paxton's deputies accused him of bribery and abusing his office to help real estate developer Nate Paul, who gave Paxton $25,000 in 2018 and employs a woman with whom the Attorney General allegedly had an extramarital affair. By November, the 8 deputies who reported Paxton to the FBI had all quit or been fired, including the longtime Texas Ranger who was the agency's head of law enforcement. Well. That brings us to our break period, and why don't we go to our break? When we come back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, 21st Century Grapes of Wrath. While the story in the adapted screenplay Nomadland isn't similar to the Steinbeck novel or John Ford film of last century, one can't help but note certain parallels. Both are set in the American heartland, and the action in both stems from massive economic displacement, which causes the characters to question their place in a remote and evolving system. Nomadland follows Fern, a victim of the Great Recession. In 2011, the real-life town of Empire, Nevada was abandoned, its zip code deleted, when the U.S. gypsum plant there closed due to a lack of demand for sheetrock after the construction industry collapse. Following the death of her husband and with few prospects, she sells her possessions and hits the road in search of work, which very much defines her self-worth. She finds gigs okay, it's the gig economy, right? At an Amazon fulfillment center, in kitchens and agriculture, as well as fellowship on the road amongst the similarly situated. The film is very much a window into the world of, as Fern emphatically notes, the houseless, not the homeless. Besides one overtly political monologue at a nomad encampment, these folks' desperation is left unstated, leaving one to wonder how in America. In the movie's second half, though, it becomes clear that, unlike some of Fern's compatriots, she has choices, and it's here that the documentary lean gives way to a more conventional dramatic narrative. Frances McDormand becomes Fern for director Chloe Zhao. Most of the other characters are real-life nomads, used perfectly in the spectacularly shot gem. In Grapes of Wrath, there were messianic characters and a physical exodus portrayed. After all, a better day was coming. 80 years later, though, in Nomad, it's hard to see that it has. But for the nomads, the road goes on. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly. a new Scientific American podcast series.
This is your fast-track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research, and we help you understand what it really means.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
And I'm Josh Fishman.
And we're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today, we're going to be talking about the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the race between declining cases and the rise of new virus variants, and new ideas about why the virus may trigger diabetes.
Tanya, we have a new vaccine, and it seems to work. Who made it, and has the FDA authorized it yet?
That's right. The shot is made by Johnson & Johnson, and it works. According to data submitted to the FDA, it had 72% efficacy in the U.S. clinical trial and 64% in the South Africa trial, where a worrisome new virus variant has been circulating. It also seems to protect against severe disease, with 86% efficacy in the U.S. and 82% in South Africa. In addition, the vaccine may also prevent transmission of the virus to unvaccinated people, although data are not yet conclusive.
Now just wait a sec. You said shot when you started talking, not shots?
That's right. Unlike some of the other vaccines out there, Johnson & Johnson's is just one shot, and it can be stored at room temperature for up to 3 months. The biggest hurdle right now is making enough doses. But the FDA Advisory Committee is meeting right now, and the vaccine could be approved very soon. There's some good news about COVID cases worldwide, Josh, but some other not-so-good news. What's going on?
Well, good news is that since mid-January, case rates have been dropping. Hospitalization rates have dropped too. For example, in the U.S., cases have dropped 30% during the past 2 weeks. The United Kingdom has seen a similar trend. And this, epidemiologists think, is really all about us being careful. Less group gatherings, activity restrictions that local governments put in place after that very scary Christmas spike in cases and deaths. And we're all wearing masks more often.
Well, that's good to hear, but what's the bad news?
Well, the not-so-great news is that several variants are showing up that may be more transmissible and may resist antibodies created by your immune system and even some of the vaccines. I spoke with Vaughn Cooper, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Pittsburgh, who has found more variants with mutations at the same spot on the virus. He thinks they appear because they help the virus to survive and to replicate. Scientists think we're okay now, but the big push is to get more shots in more arms to slow the rise of even more variants. Finally, you've learned about some new connections between the virus and another disease, right, Tanya?
That's right, Josh. Diabetes is a known risk factor for severe COVID. But now, many doctors are reporting that COVID may actually cause new diabetes diagnoses. Some experts think the novel coronavirus may infect the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas, but this idea is somewhat controversial. Another possibility is that the viral infection causes diabetes symptoms, or that steroids, which are used to treat severe COVID and can raise blood sugar, may be having a similar effect. Finally, these new COVID-related diabetes cases may just be existing disease that doctors hadn't yet diagnosed. We don't yet know what's going on, but scientists are urgently investigating. Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us.
Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of COVID Quickly, and check out SciAm.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As the days get longer and the weather warms, people of all ages will start to spring into action. Spring is a great time to breathe fresh air, stretch your arms and legs, and get physically active outdoors. Lack of physical activity contributes to obesity, heart disease, stroke, and other chronic health conditions. Fortunately, many communities are making it easier and safer to be physically active. Neighborhoods across the country are working together to create more public spaces for walking, running, biking, and other physical activities. Adults should get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week, and children should get 60 minutes a day. If you find it hard to walk to a local recreation center, park, or playground, learn how to make your neighborhood a place that makes healthy living easier. Visit makinghealtheasier.org for information about ways communities can change to get more people outside and moving.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Voter fraud myth fuels GOP drive to rewrite laws. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute, and that was a recent New York Times headline for the story widely reported. The Republicans countrywide are mounting extraordinary efforts to legislate voter suppression. Last November, there was record voter turnout across the United States and no fraud. Nevertheless, state legislatures across the country are pushing to enact laws that will make it much more difficult to vote by eliminating no-excuse absentee ballots and otherwise constructing numerous other obstacles to absentee voting, by minimizing early voting days and reducing the number of hours polls are open on Election Day, creating long lines, and effectively eliminating voting places in neighborhoods of color, and by closing popular voting places like college campuses and voting centers, and by ending automatic voter registration at motor vehicle offices, and by curtailing early voting on Sundays when many African Americans vote after church. The racism is palpable. The justification for this overt voter suppression is the big lie that the 2020 election somehow was stolen from Donald Trump, the remedy for which is to ensure that certain people, particularly people of color and other marginalized communities, don't vote again. The consequences of a successful legislative push for voter suppression would be dire. As a Democratic state senator in Iowa summarized, on this path, we're not going to have a working democracy. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
In February, Texas Senator Ted Cruz ran off to a luxury resort in sunny Cancun, Mexico, during the deep freeze that devastated millions of his constituents. But I wasn't mad that Ted fled. What upset me was that our government let him back into our country. Cruz is, after all, the two-legged, self-aggrandizing ego that arrogantly and illegally tried to cancel the ballots of millions of voters in last year's presidential election. Then he helped dupe a crowd of Trumpeteers into storming our nation's capital in a violent and silly attempt to seize control of our government by force. Now, the wannabe autocrat is demanding that the Supreme Court suppress the people's democratic will. He's teamed up with the sour old corporate plutocrat, Mitch McConnell, to back a ploy by Arizona Republicans to disenfranchise Latino, Indigenous American, and black voters. Cruz and McConnell demand that the court's partisan Republican justices gut America's landmark Voting Rights Act, which prohibits states from restricting the opportunity for minority voters to participate in the political process. Arizona's Republican lawmakers had passed a nasty provision declaring that any ballot cast in the wrong precinct, no matter how valid, must be tossed in the trash, rather than merely allocating it to the voter's correct precinct. This almost entirely affects people of color, for GOP election officials play nefarious games with them, such as frequently moving their voting places, often at the last minute, with little notice. Instead of pushing their party to try winning these people's votes, Ted and Mitch simply want to eliminate the voters. They've asked the court to nullify that bothersome Voting Rights Act so their party can freely lock out minority voters. This is Jim Hightower saying the greatest threat to our democracy is not a violent mob, but a legalistic coup by thugs like Ted Cruz.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1950. That was the day 4,600 baggage handlers, mechanics, and store personnel ended their strike against American Airlines. The 11-day strike affected airports in 34 cities, crippling 80% of Americans' operations. Transport Workers Union leader Mike Quill demanded wage increases, job security, and the guarantee against subcontracting out of maintenance work. The transport workers had been locked into negotiations and mediation for months leading up to the strike at the beginning of March. In her book, On the Ground, Labor Struggle in the American Airline Industry, Liesl Miller-Ornick notes that the strike was an example of cross-skill solidarity within the union. Union baggage handlers were the first to walk out. Quill hoped to garner support by emphasizing that the planes were improperly maintained. He demanded that President Truman take over the airlines on the basis that the planes were unsafe for public transportation. Support for the strike remained strong in larger cities, but in smaller cities, strikers looked to return to work. Miller-Ornick adds, the strike victory resulted in industry firsts, a severance package for laid-off workers, and a company policy pledging only to subcontract mechanical work that American Airlines employees did not have time to do. Though they did not gain wage increases, they did win significant increases in sick leave, 3 weeks paid vacation after 12 years of service instead of 15, and paid meal times for night shift workers. Transport Workers Union members at Pan Am were inspired to strike over similar demands 2 months later. The victory at American spurred national mediators to hammer out a settlement in favor of Pan Am strikers only 17 hours after the strike was called. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Thursday, March 11th, 2021. I'm Mark Boulanger. The International Labour Movement is marking the one-year anniversary of the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the projects has been to ask unionists around the world to talk about their experiences. The project has been organized by the International Trade Union Confederation. The ITUC represents national labor centers such as the Nigerian Labor Congress and the AFL-CIO in the United States. Sharon Burrow is the ITUC's General Secretary.
Workers all around the world have been living with COVID-19 for a year now, since the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic. There's no doubt that we've seen many new areas of language enter our lexicon. Who heard of furloughs or lockdowns or quarantine or the question of bubbles, all of these measures? But for me, 3 words stand out. One is frontline workers, those incredible workers, the majority of them women who went to work every day to save lives, to keep us protected, but are amongst the lowest paid. Then there's the loss of jobs, job cuts everywhere, people without hope of livelihoods. We need to see investment in jobs, in care, in climate-friendly jobs from every government. And of course, there is vaccination, the ugly side of nationalism, vaccine nationalism, where the COVID reality is global, we're interdependent, but indeed the wealthy countries are hoarding vaccines and the big pharma companies are refusing to share their technology so that in fact it could be produced everywhere. Vaccine nationalism is ugly and must be eliminated. But can I say I'm very proud of trade unions, working people everywhere who fought for advances on the social contract to protect each other.
One of the unionists who has been participating in the COVID Experience Project is Akatoa Joel Odiji, the Deputy General Secretary of ITUC Africa. He was asked to pick 3 of the most important experiences he has had since the pandemic started a year ago.
Number 1 would be face mask. Number 2 would be, hey kids, can you please keep your voices down? And number 3 would be PPEs. Why have I chosen these 3 words? First, face mask. Upon COVID-19 becoming declared as a pandemic, there was a bit of panic, hysteria. And so the whole lot of how you keep safe became one of the things everybody took to heart. Keeping safe then means you have to observe some hygienic protocols. And for me, a face mask became the scene of it. All of a sudden, face mask was out of supply, and immediately after, face mask was everywhere being distributed, and people all over having a face mask, and it became more like an offense, a crime, if you are not wearing one. And so enforcement became part of it, and a lot of persons made informal businesses from it. Hey kids, can you please keep your voices down? I've been working from home since March. So it's over a year, so to say, that I've been working from home. Our office is based in Lome, Togo, but I'm working from Abuja, Nigeria. And so I have to also join in the task of trying to take care of the kids and then manage their excitement, especially when they were not in schools, when the schools were also locked down. So it was a bit of challenge having to deal with children at home and you are working at home, even while you have your space. And then PPEs, of course, that has still been the challenge for most developing countries. And that's why some of us are excited about COVAX. This whole idea that we can generally, through our humanity and solidarity, mobilize resources that can help take care of everybody.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. You can find our features and daily newscasts at radiolabor.net. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the low to mid-50s. Oh my, considering that it was only about 40 to 42 yesterday. Morning clouds will give way to afternoon sunshine. Winds will be light and variable. Clear skies overnight with lows in the low 30s. Winds will remain light and variable, and a mainly sunny sky tomorrow with highs around 60. Winds light and variable. Oh my. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County here in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 8,672. We have 2 more dead from yesterday and now at 120. But they're going to open everything up, so I guess it's okay. Pollen is still rated as none here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 30 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 3. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.18 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 48 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 54 and partly cloudy. Rome is 58 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 31 and fair. Kabul is 45 and fair. Hong Kong is 65 and clear. Tokyo is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 72 and merely cloudy. San Francisco, California is 43 and mostly cloudy. And New York is a spring-like 57 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Reuters staff bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. One person was killed after police fired rubber bullets yesterday, Wednesday, to disperse a crowd of protesters at the University of Wits in Johannesburg, police and a student leader said. The students are demanding that those who owe the university up to 150,000 rand, or about $9,850 in fees, still be allowed to register for the new academic year. The cost of university education, prohibitive for many black students, has become a symbol of the inequalities that endure in South Africa more than 2 decades after the end of apartheid. Wits Student Representative Council President Mpendulu Mafeka said the person shot was not believed to be a student. Reuters could not immediately confirm the details of the person killed. Police spokesman speaking to National Talk radio station SAFM confirmed the death of a middle-aged man, but did not say who had fired the fatal shot. We are investigating the circumstances of the incident. Police have been in the area of the protests where they've been deployed to maintain law and order, the police spokesman said. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate, the IPID, said it was looking into the incident. The directorate has dispatched 4 investigation officers to probe the allegations. The team will also cordon the crime scene and conduct the investigation, including locating the person with video footage, identifying eyewitnesses, etc., it said in a statement. Most students in South Africa are caught up in a group widely called the missing middle, those who are not poor enough to qualify for government aid, but not wealthy enough to pay. Protesting students took to the streets of the Braamfontein district, where the university is located. The police threw stun grenades to try and disperse the protest, but we didn't run away, so they started firing rubber bullets, the student leader said. The person who was shot directly in the head. Wits University executive said in a statement it was concerned by the escalation of the situation. It said 3 protesters had been arrested by police and taken to a nearby station, while 2 student reporters had been injured. In 2016, widespread student protests for free higher education forced temporary closures at a number of South African universities.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Reuters staff bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Mexico has received 280 pre-Hispanic archaeological pieces that were in the United States amid efforts by authorities to recover part of the country's cultural heritage. The pieces are at the National Institute of Anthropology and History in Mexico City, where they will be studied and cataloged. They will eventually join INAH's permanent collection of movable archaeological assets. The first batch of 270 artifacts, which was seized by U.S. immigration officials in 2012, includes pre-Hispanic pieces, mostly carved stone artifacts, as well as tools like stone axes. The government did not include details on the seizure of the assets. Well, that's good news. And it also brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.